Part 87. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 861. Chapter 861 Wife Protecting Treasure 4. Tanyuj still misses his ex-wife, she can tell. At this moment, she also understood that Anil and other Tanyuj suitors were no match for Jianyuman, his ex-wife. They say that my ex is a terrifying existence, and it is indeed true. Tanyuj took a deep breath and looked around without seeing Jianyuman. His face became increasingly gloomy and he looked at Lisa with cold eyes. Miss Lisa, for the sake of my friendship with your father, I warn you not to challenge my relationship with you. Inverse scales, do not touch them easily. Once touched, you will get a terrifying response. Tanyuj is such a person. He doesn't have many reverse scales on his body, but Jianyuman is the most untouchable softness on his body. He is not stupid, he naturally knows that Lisa is causing trouble for Jianyuman, and he needs to warn Lisa. His reverse scales cannot be touched. Tanyuj stepped away indifferently, his eyes constantly looking for Jianyuman at the banquet venue. He searched around but couldn't find Jianyuman, and he felt annoyed. Looking back on everything that happened tonight, if Ji-fan knew about it, he would definitely get scolded again. He said he wanted to recover Jian'er, but things would never develop as he thought, and he would always encounter something unexpected. For example, there are unruly young ladies like Lisa, and Jianyunyun who Jianyuman hates. I thought he would show more attentiveness tonight and slowly bring us closer to each other, but I didn't expect that these things would happen tonight, and I was afraid that he would push her further away. It seems that next time the two of them want to get along, they can no longer appear in public places. This kind of place where emergencies can happen at any time will bring them closer to each other. Jianyuman left the venue and wandered slowly on the streets of London alone. Bits and pieces of what happened tonight kept replaying in his mind. Tanyuj is admired by all the stars, Anil and Lisa are jealous of Tanyuj, and Jianyunyun is mocking and making things difficult. What saddened her the most was the message she got from Lisa. Everything else could be faced calmly, but she couldn't convince her heart not to think about it. She was constantly analyzing her position in Tanyuj's heart in her mind. In the end, after much deliberation, she could only analyze the word sister. She had a secret crush on brother Wang when she was a child, married Tanyuj when she grew up, and later fell in love with him. In his words, he has always been the little girl next door when he was a child. Even when he became his wife, he loved her but did not give her love. In the 2 years and 7 months they were separated, the distance between them became farther and farther. She clearly chose to let go. Why couldn't she do it? It's really hard to let go. At this time, Jianyuman's cell phone rang. She looked down and saw that it was Tanyuj's caller ID. The last time she called to pretend to be sick, she remembered the phone number deeply in her mind. Even if she didn't save the call in her phone, she still remembered it. He recognized Tanyuj's phone number at a glance. When Jianyuman saw the phone call, she had no intention of answering it. Why would she call her? Can't you see that she doesn't want to be a couple with him, let alone a friend? He couldn't bear to part with her as his sister, but she had to stay away so that she could let him go and live a normal life. Jianyuman hung up the phone hesitantly and blocked his call directly. The world suddenly became quiet, and her heart became calm when she blacklisted him. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 862. Chapter 862 I can't help but want to kiss her one. It's time to let it go. After walking for a long time, the high heels on her feet were scratched on her heels. She took off her 7-centimeter high heels and walked on the colder streets of London. Summer has gone and it has entered early autumn. The streets are covered with sycamore leaves. She steps on the withered yellow leaves with her bare feet, feeling happy, and her mood slowly adjusts itself. Less than 5 minutes after the phone was blocked, the phone rang again. Qian Yuman thought it was Tanyuj calling again. After all, Tanyuj could borrow someone else's phone if he couldn't call in. When she saw the noun on the caller ID, a faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "Hey, Kenny Appa, why did you remember to call me?" Qian Yuman said hello with a relaxed tone and a smile. Kenny has been by her side to take care of her for more than 2 years. With Kenny by his side, she has a very relaxed life and does not put any pressure on her. The humorous Kenny always cheers her up in his own way and makes her irritable mood relax. It's not that she can't let go of Tanyuj, maybe she will really accept his feelings. Sometimes I think that if the person I met first was Kenny, maybe nothing would have happened to Tanyuj at all, and she would not have been emotionally hurt. I was having dinner tonight, and suddenly I remembered what little Mickey told me to supervise whether my little Dobby was eating well, so I called you to check on him. Kenny's pleasant voice rang in her ears, making Qian Yuman's mood change. Better. I ate, and I ate a lot, and I have a tendency to gain weight recently. I don't think you will gain weight, but I think you will catch a cold, Kenny said with a chuckle. "Tch, you cursed me," Qian Yuman complained dissatisfiedly. She was as strong as a cow, how could she catch a cold? "Who told you not to wear your shoes properly? You're still walking barefoot on the ground at the end of October. Aren't you afraid of catching a cold?" Kenny's tone was endearing, but it was obviously filled with a hint of reproach. To others, it sounded like when talking about love, you can seduce someone's heart away if you are not careful. Just as Qian Yuman thought, with Kenny's condition and personality, if she hadn't had a thick layer of ice wrapped around her heart, she would have been pried off the wall and thrown into Kenny's arms. Hearing Kenny's words, Qian Yuman felt warm in her heart at first. She looked down at her bare feet on a sycamore leaf, tilted her head and frowned. "How do you know I'm barefoot?" Qian Yuman asked doubtfully. Could it be that he had clairvoyance? "You'll know when you look back," Kenny said with a chuckle. This sentence made Qian Yuman straighten her back, because she felt that the sentence did not seem to come from the mobile phone, but rather from behind. What does this mean? Qian Yuman turned around obediently, and what she saw was not Kenny's handsome face, but a large bouquet of red roses, a total of 99 red roses. Under the dim street lights, Kenny slowly moved the rose underneath, revealing his handsome face and the warm smile on his face. The sycamore leaves floated down from the trees and fell to the ground, falling on Kenny and Qian Yuman. Qian Yuman, wearing a women's suit and holding black high heels, had a charming smile on her face. Handsome men and beautiful women exude each other's charming charm under the dim street lights. Looking at the scene of the two standing together from a distance, it seems like a beautiful painting by a master. It can only be seen from a distance but not close. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 863. Chapter 863. I can't help but want to kiss her too. Handsome men and beautiful women exude each other's charming charm under the dim street lights. Looking at the scene of the two standing together from a distance, it seems like a beautiful painting by a master. It can only be seen from a distance but not close. Qian Yuman's eyes were quickly attracted to the roses in front of her, and the sudden surprise made her lively. He was lifeless just a moment ago, immersed in sadness. Within a minute of Kenny's arrival, all sadness disappeared. Wow! So beautiful! Qian Yuman happily reached out and took the rose from Kenny's hand. Looking at the delicate roses and smelling the fragrance of the roses, her mood improved a lot. What woman doesn't like roses? Qian Yuman especially likes it. Kenny looked sad, covering his little heart with his hands and sighing. Little funny boy, why do you notice the roses instead of the handsome and charming Appa? Kenny pointed at his handsome mixed-race face that fascinated thousands of girls and complained. Jian-Yuman pursed her lips and pointed at the rose. I see your face often, but I rarely receive roses. And this seems to be the first time you have given me roses. In the past, Kenny always guarded Jian-Yuman silently. Since the last proposal, the two of them haven't seen each other for a while. Unexpectedly, Kenny Appa would appear in front of her again with a large bouquet of roses. Ah! It turns out that I am really not as important as the rose. Kenny looked annoyed and tried to the rose back from Jian-Yuman's hand, but Jian-Yuman turned around and dodged. Don't try to steal my roses. Jian-Yuman hugged the roses and hummed at Kenny, then lowered her head happily and continued to watch the roses. Kenny Appa may not have expected that what Jian-Yuman was thinking about at this moment was not how happy she would be to receive the roses, but how many times she could take a bath with these roses. If she couldn't finish soaking them, she could keep them for a few days. How can I make the flowers wither slower? I was thinking about buying some milk and making milk roses. I really can't finish it, so I'm wondering if I should share it with other colleagues. After all, the stingy Jian-Yuman knows that roses are quite expensive, and 99 roses cost a lot of money. She has to raise little Mickey, so she needs to save money. After all, children cost a lot of money. She must be careful with her budget, as raising children now costs money. You're so funny. Kenny shook his head and smiled helplessly. Anyone who wanted to steal the flower from her would have given it to her, but she still protected him as if he really wanted to steal it. Jian-Yuman stuck out her tongue at Kenny and counted the number of roses in her arms with a smile. Although she knew there were 99 roses, she still couldn't help but count them. Why are you barefoot? Kenny looked at Jian-Yuman's little feet that were still standing bare on the ground. Jian-Yuman pointed to the high heels in her hands and threw them on the ground in disgust. I bought new high-heeled shoes the day before yesterday. I didn't expect that I would get blisters after wearing them for only 2 hours. They broke just now and they hurt a lot. With me wearing his old shoes if he'd known it. When Kenny heard that Jian-Yuman's foot was broken, he actually produced 2 band-aids with his hands, squatted down slowly, gently grabbed her foot, placed it on his bent knee, and put the band-aid on her heel. Muttering it while posting it. I told you that new shoes need to undergo some treatment before wearing them. Otherwise, it will still be your feet that suffer. They are bleeding and you don't know how to feel sorry for yourself. I don't care, you don't want to compete with me for Appa. Appa can only be mine. Do you know? End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 864. Chapter 864. I can't help but want to kiss her. 3. Kenny gently put a band-aid on one foot and replaced it with a band-aid on the other foot. His little feet stepped on his dark trousers, leaving white footprints and staining his expensive trousers. He didn't have any dislike and still gently treated her small wounds caused by wearing high heels. Obviously he was dealing with a wound, but it was like handling a rare treasure in his hands, with great care and gentle movements. After putting band-aids on both feet, there were 2 footprints on his trousers. Jian-Yuman saw it, and smiled and stepped on his knee with another foot. She childishly used his trousers as a cloth to wipe the dirt on the soles of his feet, having a great time. Kenny laughed for a while, shook his head with a smile, still squatting, and let her have fun. As a result, in a moment, the knees of his black trousers turned into white trousers. Okay, you ruined my trousers, let's see how I punish you. Kenny stood up, pretending to pounce on me. Jian-Yuman laughed and took a few steps back. As a result, she accidentally stepped on the stone and jumped in pain. As a result, she lost her footing and fell backwards. She was about to sit down on the ground. She had quick eyesight and quick hands. I reached out and grabbed Jian-Yuman's arm, pulling it towards him. His other hand wrapped around her waist, successfully preventing her from falling to the ground. Qian Yuman's eyes were as big as copper bells. She raised her hands high and raised the roses in her hands above her head. When she was about to fall to the ground, she was not thinking that her was about to have 2 petals, but that she was about to have 2 petals. She was worried about whether the rose in her hand would fall to the ground and break, so from now on, Kenny was saving her butt, and she was protecting her rose. She was held tightly in Kenny's arms, and her eyes were always looking up at the roses. Kenny leaned forward, and from behind Kenny, the 2 people looked like they were kissing. A series of interactions between the 2 made passers-by unable to help but take a few more glances. Since Kenny appeared in front of Qian Yuman holding a rose just now, the couple has attracted a lot of attention. Seeing the 2 people in this posture, an old man sighed in his heart, "It's so good to be young, and they can kiss on the street if they want." Qian Yuman was sure that the rose had not fallen and was well protected by her. She immediately exhaled and looked at Kenny with a smile. "Fortunately, my roses were not broken, otherwise I wouldn't have had to take a bath at night." Before she could say the word bath, Qian Yuman immediately covered her mouth and almost let Kenny know what happened to the roses he sent. Fortunately she realized it in time. "What are you doing?" Kenny smiled faintly and looked at Qian Yuman's face. The distance between their faces was very close. He only had to lean forward slightly to kiss her red lips. It was clear that he could touch her little mouth only 5 centimeters away, but Qian Yuman covered her mouth because she almost spilled the beans. If she hadn't covered her, at such a close distance, he might not be able to restrain himself and kiss her. The distance between the 2 of them was unprecedentedly close at this moment, with one hand holding her wrist and the other around her waist. Because Qian Yuman wanted to protect the rose in his hand, he also raised his right hand, looking from a distance. The picture is both funny and beautiful. Kenny's blue eyes carefully looked at Qian Yuman's facial features, feeling the delicate body that was close to her, and smelling the fragrance emanating from her body. His heart couldn't help but throb, and the little beast in his heart was a little uncontrollable. Live yourself. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 865. Chapter 865. I can't help but want to kiss her for. I really want to kiss her little mouth, I really want to, I really want to. However, reason still defeated him, and he did not do so, not wanting to scare himself because of his abruptness. Finally, the relationship between the 2 became closer than ever before, and he was willing to wait slowly for Qian Yuman to agree to her proposal. At that time, he can kiss her openly and smell her cherry mouth without her consent. Qian Yuman took his hand away and stuck out his tongue with a smile. "Nothing, nothing." Qian Yuman turned away, her eyes rolling, feeling a little guilty. Kenny chuckled, slowly loosened his hand around her waist, and asked her to stand upright. "What did you say you wanted to drink just now?" Although Kenny let go of Qian Yuman, it didn't mean that he didn't understand the meaning of Qian Yuman's words and deliberately continued to ask. Qian Yuman immediately covered her hand with one hand, shook her head quickly, and spoke through her hands. "You must have heard wrong. I didn't say the word bath. I didn't even say that I wanted to use it for a bath." Qian Yuman turned around and wanted to run, but she took a step and stepped on the stone again. She immediately jumped up and grabbed her little toes, forming a golden rooster independent posture. "Little Shitu, you bastard, I stepped on you twice in one night." Qian Yuman lowered her head and glared seriously at the stone at her feet, as if trying to get into a fight with it. Kenny knelt down and held her high heels on the ground with one hand, pointing to the back of her hand. "It seems that for the sake of my princess, this knight can only be a horse once tonight and be ridden by you once." Qian Yuman cheered and quickly jumped on Kenny's back, while taking good care of the roses that were going to be bathed in the evening. Qian Yuman weighed less than 100 kilograms. For Kenny, carrying it on his back was a piece of cake. He immediately stood up with Jian-Yuman on his back and walked slowly towards his parked car. Jian-Yuman lay on Kenny's back, holding his shoulder with one hand and holding a rose in the other, with a sly smile in her eyes. "Kenny, you said you wanted to be ridden by me tonight." Jian-Yuman's eyes flashed with a strange smile. "That's right, aren't you riding on my back now?" "Oh, no, 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 Kenny Oba, you didn't understand what I meant. That's not what I meant by riding." "Huh, does it have other meanings?" Kenny really didn't understand. Jian-Yuman covered her mouth and smiled happily, like an old pervert. She deliberately lowered her voice, looked around, and leaned into his ear and spoke. "Of course it's a ride between men and women. Usually in bed, men ride women. Since Kenny Appa is willing to be ridden by me tonight, I don't mind being a female knight and riding you well." Ha! Ha ha! After saying this, Jian-Yuman was amused by herself, and she raised her head and laughed. "You little," Kenny understood Jian-Yuman's meaning and laughed along with Jian-Yuman. Naturally, he knew that she was not telling the truth. She just had an evil mind and always misinterpreted other people's normal language. From time to time, he can speak in a pornographic accent, and he is already used to it. "Originally, you said that a man said this to a woman, but that's not the case." Jian-Yuman laughed and patted Kenny's shoulder. The muscles on her face were stiff when she smiled. It wasn't because of Kenny's strong back. Maybe she will laugh sadly. "Okay, okay, you defeated me." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 866. Chapter 866 Punishing the One. Kenny shook his head helplessly, and followed Jian-Yuman's laughter. For so many years, this little woman's evil thoughts have never been concealed. Obviously she looks like a goddess in all aspects of appearance, but some of the things she sometimes says are funny and evil. So he usually calls her Zyokyobi, but sometimes he calls her Lao Sig, like Jian-Yuman who speaks in a pornographic accent at the moment. "Kenny Oba, why did you come to London and I didn't even listen to you? I've got a surprise for you." "Then how did you know I was here?" "It's a secret." "Hooray, you and I are following each other, and there are secrets as to whether high-tech products such as trackers are installed on me." "I will not tell you. Looks like I'm going to have to use severe torture to extract a confession." "I won't tell you." No matter how Jian-Yuman asked, Kenny didn't say anything. Jian-Yuman wandered the streets of London alone for more than 20 minutes and was already far away from the banquet venue. The reason Kenny didn't say anything was that he knew that she came to the banquet hotel today and wanted to take her back to the hotel. When he came, he happened to see her coming out of the banquet hall depressed. For the next 20 minutes, he followed her silently, giving her a quiet environment and not directly disturbing her. He followed him for a while, but Jian-Yuman didn't notice. He made sure that she was in a better mood, so he called to test her before walking out. He knew at that time that she needed some time alone, so he chose to follow behind her quietly and did not come out to disturb her. Jian-Yuman and Kenny came to the car talking and laughing. The two of them were talking and laughing, but they didn't notice that there was a figure not far away from them that kept following them. Since the two people met, this figure has paid attention to them. Watching Kenny send roses, Jian-Yuman happily accepted them and a series of interactions. Jian-Yuman almost fell down, but was caught by Kenny. From his perspective, it looked like Jian-Yuman was raising her head to beg for a kiss, and Kenny was leaning in for a kiss. Then Jian-Yuman's gesture of covering her mouth was misunderstood by the figure as her being embarrassed, covering her red lips where the passionate kiss had just ended. "Damn it, are they together already?" The figure clenched its hands into fists and glared at the talking and laughing figures with angry eyes. He had been standing quietly, watching Kenny gradually walk away with Jian Yuman on his back, and his eyes had been staring at them, glaring without blinking. Is he still late? On a rare holiday, Jian Yuman held a telescope in her hand and came to a coffee shop to meet the immortal Yingzhi. The two of them had made an appointment to meet together 2 days ago. Both of them wore peaked caps on their heads, sunglasses on their eyes, and were dressed mysteriously. When Xian Yingzhi saw Jian Yuman, he waved happily and ran over. When Xian Yingzhi approached, Jian Yuman looked him up and down. Why do you feel like you've grown taller? The height difference between Jian Yuman and Xian Yingzhi is only 2 or 3 centimeters. Plus she sometimes wears high heels, and she is even 2 or 3 centimeters taller than Xian Yingzhi. Normally, they still look about the same. Standing next to him today, although she was wearing flat shoes, she could feel that he was obviously taller than her. Really? Maybe it's a matter of time after tomorrow. Xian Yingzhi touched the back of his head with his right hand, looked elsewhere, and spoke in a somewhat unconfident tone. Really? The day before yesterday I saw that you and I were pretty much the same. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 867. Chapter 867 Punishing the Bitches Too. Why is it that he is only 2 days old and is obviously 3 to 4 centimeters taller than her? Jian Yuman's beautiful eyes looked down, and then she stopped at Xian Yingzhi's sneakers. The style of the sneakers was very trendy. From the point where the ankle bones were exposed, she finally saw why Xian Yingzhi was obviously taller than before. It turned out the problem was his new pair of shoes. Yingzhi, you wear the inner tube and your height increases. Jian Yuman discovered that the new world generally revealed the reason why Xian Yingzhi suddenly increased his height. Ha ha ha. I don't know. Really? I bought the shoes because they looked good in style. It turns out they have an internal growth effect. I said that the air smelled much fresher today. Xian Yingzhi's cute little face turned red. He was exposed. Embarrassed. Actually, he bought this new pair of shoes yesterday. He had never felt a little annoyed about his height of only 1.721 meters before, but this fact caused him trouble in the past 2 days. Because every time Jian Yuman wears high heels, she looks a little taller than him. When I thought that I was a little shorter than her, I bought the first pair of shoes that could increase the height by 5 centimeters. Jian Yuman covered her mouth and smiled, unable to help but tease. Oh. My little Yingzhi has grown up. I know what birthday gift to give you this year, so I'll give you an inner booster pad. After saying this, Jian Yuman also made herself laugh. Xian Yingzhi's face turned redder, and he puffed up his chest and abdomen with a dissatisfied look on his face. I'm older than you, Xian Yingzhi reiterated. Although he had said it many times, Jian Yuman never took it to heart every time. He was also very upset because he had a short face. Ah! The person is here. Jian Yuman just looked at the road for a while, and immediately shouted in surprise. She covered her face with the menu. After making sure that the person had walked away in less than a minute, she immediately took it out. The telescope tracks the person she wants to spy on. Xian Yingzhi also put the binoculars on his eyes, and his eyes quickly found the enchanting woman who was dressed in clothes, and the giant peaks almost jumped out of the clothes. There was also a woman in clothes beside her, but her were not as big as hers. These two people were Jian Yunyun and Lisa, who deliberately caused trouble for Jian Yuman at the banquet 2 days ago. Jian Yuman took out her mobile phone and quickly dialed a number. The people have arrived and can take action. After hanging up the phone, Jian Yuman excitedly pulled Xian Yingzhi and chased them out. The binoculars in her hands kept following Jian Yunyun and the two. Since that night, Jian Yuman has been feeling uncomfortable, and so has Xian Yingzhi. After all, that night, Jian Yunyun and the others clearly wanted to cause trouble for Jian Yuman and the others and said a lot of unpleasant things. The attack on Jian Yuman was particularly obvious, and she was almost slapped by Lisa. If Tang Yuj had not stopped her at that time, she would have suffered a loss. Based on the principle of life that whoever offends her will be repaid tenfold, Jian Yuman is going to give these two some harmless revenge today. Of course you won't be as stupid as them to teach a lesson. If you rush in to teach others a lesson, you will eventually fall into someone else's trap and get yourself into trouble. So she specially found Dongfang Xiang and asked him to send two of his men to teach Lisa and Lisa a lesson, and specifically wanted those who looked particularly gangsters to harass them for a long time. The so-called long term refers to harassing them for a long time, and today is the first day of harassment, the first day of the show. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 868. Chapter 868 Punishing the Three. As the son of a former underworld boss, Dongfang Xiang had many of his subordinates who were former gangsters, and she didn't need to teach them how to torture people. Coupled with Dongfang Xiang's background, even if Lisa investigated who was harassing them, she would only investigate Dongfang Xiang at most, but not her at all. Lisa has been treated badly for a week, and the investigation can't find her fault. There is no place to vent where she wants to vent. Thinking about it makes her very excited. Hearing that he was going to punish people, Xian Yingzhi was laughed at by the children at first. After learning about it, he immediately joined in the fun, eating popcorn and watching in excitement. They were 30 or 40 meters away from Lisa, watching with telescopes in their hands. When they saw two familiar men dressed as hooligans, wearing torn jeans and short t-shirts, they walked towards the two women in clothes without looking serious. Jian Yunyun and Lisa, who were about to go shopping, were chatting and laughing, talking about the new bags they saw online yesterday, and they agreed to go shopping together today. The two chatted happily, making artificial laughter from time to time, but 10 meters away from them, two ruffians walked directly towards them. As soon as they walked over, one of the black gangsters shook his feet and crossed in front of Lisa and Jian Yunyun, whistling. "Hi, hot girl, let's have dinner together tonight if you have time." Lisa was the daughter of a famous lady who had been held in the palm of her hand since she was a child. Faced with the two gangsters' chats, Lisa raised her head to the sky and snorted coldly from her nose. "Roll." "Yo," another gangster joked. "This hot girl is really hot, but I like her." "What are you doing?" Jian Yunyun quickly took a step back and blocked her face with the bag in her hand. "What are you doing? We brothers want you to eat and sleep with us. Look at you little noses and eyes, you must be very happy in bed." The two gangsters had lewd expressions and started to move. Jian Yunyun's complexion changed drastically and she turned around to hide. As for the black gangster, his palm struck directly at Lisa's chest. Lisa, who was unable to dodge, was attacked by the black man and pinched twice. "Wow, Dick, these are real. I looked at them from a distance and thought they were fake. This F-cup feels so good. Come and touch it." The black man touched it and shouted to the other team. "A gangster with a dirty face." Jian Yunyun was screaming and hiding. Lisa was so frightened that she screamed on the spot and beat the old black gangster in front of her with her leather bag. This time Dongfang Xiang sent two gangsters who were both lustful devils. Although Jian Yunyun and Lisa avoided it, the two gangsters who often molested beautiful women were able to withstand women's resistance. The more women resisted, the more they liked them. "Ah! Help! Go away, don't touch me, do you know who I am?" Lisa was crazy. She had never been sexually harassed to this extent, and it was still on the street. She looked around for help, but found that many people left indifferently, or just stood far away and did not dare to approach. Is it because they dare not offend this black man because he is tall and strong? So passers-by just sit back and watch, or at most watch from afar. Jian Yunyun was so frightened that she hugged her knees and huddled on the ground. The gangster stood aside and did not touch her body. She was so frightened that she kept screaming. The scream could burst a person's eardrums. Ha 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 ha. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Dalby in the World. Chapter 869. Chapter 869 Punishing the Four. Qian Yuman, who was watching from a distance, smiled happily. She was very happy to see two with exquisite makeup and bright clothes being harassed by a group of gangsters. What's the use of asking for help? There are some vicious people around. Whenever they see someone wanting to come forward to help, they will glare at the person away. How can anyone come forward to help? It was impossible to be rescued. Even the police around them had been greeted by Dongfang Xiang. There was no one to save them at this moment. Even if they were raped on the spot, nothing would happen. Qian Yunyun and Lisa were harassed by the gangsters and collapsed. Without any warning, the two gangsters suddenly left. They fell to the ground in shock, their makeup all stained and their clothes messy. Qian Yunyun was even worse, because lying on the ground, her clothes were torn and dirty, turning into a mopping cloth, and her face was filled with tears because of fear. It took less than 3 minutes before and after, Qian Yuman asked for it to be done, and 3 minutes of harassment by the gangsters was enough. But in these short 3 minutes, both Qian Yunyun and Lisa were frightened. This is the first time in our lives that we have been humiliated in this way in public, and we have no ability to fight back. After the crowd gathered around, Qian Yuman retreated with Xian Yingzhi. At the same time, Qian Yuman felt better. It was enough to just watch them. She didn't care how these gangsters would deal with Lisa and Qian Yunyun in the future. She believed in Dongfang Xiang's ability to do things. Qian Yuman definitely found the right person this time. The people under Dongfang Xiang are the best at bullying people. You can't even use the word trick people to describe them. Dongfang Xiang, known as the satanic demon, takes action. The simple level can make people collapse, and the advanced level can make people crazy. Perhaps even Qian Yuman didn't expect that Dongfang Xiang's men would come up with endless ways to harm people. For the next week, Qian Yunyun and Lisa were in a state of collapse. While eating at a restaurant outside, soft-bodied reptiles appeared. When she was riding in a high-end sports car, a bunch of flying bugs appeared in the car, and even flew into her mouth. Lisa opened a fashion store and was well known in the industry. She often went to the store, but she didn't expect someone to splash paint on it in public. Qian Yunyun couldn't even go out these days, because whenever she went out, she would encounter endless accidents. As a result, even when she was hiding at home, she would encounter someone smashing all the windows in her home. Someone even threw firecrackers into her home at night. Obviously even if I live on the 8th floor now, I can't avoid being harassed. This all happened in the first 3 days. In the next 4 days, they were accompanied by bodyguards, but they could not avoid deliberate sabotage. Later, they hid directly in the mountains, and the situation became slightly better. Just as Qian Yuman said, they investigated who was persecuting them. In the end, the investigation ended with Dongfang Xiang's side. Knowing that it was Dongfang Xiang, Lisa was so angry that she couldn't do anything because she knew that Dongfang Xiang's family could not be easily provoked. To them, the current evil practices are just childish. It does not threaten their lives or drive them crazy. It is all the mercy of the Eastern group. It was even more impossible to get to the bottom of it. They could only swallow their grievances and anger. Lisa couldn't find out from any aspect that this incident was related to traction. One of the reasons was that not many people knew that Dongfang Xiang and Qian Yuman knew each other. When Qian Yuman was raising a baby with Wang Tianyuo, Dongfang Xiang was with him. While recuperating there, the two of them had the best relationship apart from Kenny, a little closer than Wang Tianyue. End of this chapter. After the flash marriage, the character collapsed. Author, Daobi in the World. Chapter 870. Chapter 870 Taking a Love Rival to Visit a Doctor 1. Kenny and Jianyuman ate together in a high-end restaurant. Jianyuman loved being treated to a big meal. As a family of foodies, they want to save money to raise their children, and at the same time, they also want to feel safe, so tricking people into inviting her to dinner is the best solution. So Kenny only needs to invite Jianyuman to dinner, and Jianyuman responds to her every request, which is extremely positive. Kenny looked at Jianyuman with a doting look on his face, who had already eaten the third plate of staple food. He hadn't even finished a single staple food on his own plate. He almost looked at Jianyuman opposite him eating, even though the woman opposite him was eating. It was a bit ferocious, but he looked at it with relish, and it was more attractive than the food on his plate. "I'm so full," Jianyuman smiled contentedly, looking at the dessert on the side, still hesitating whether to eat this dessert too. "Eat whatever you want." "But I'm almost full," Jianyuman said angrily. She should have left some room for dessert just now. "Then sit down for a while and eat later, or pack it back," Kenny suggested with a smile. As soon as Jianyuman heard this, he immediately made a decision. "Good idea, pack it up and go back." Jianyuman looked at Kenny with admiration in her eyes, winking at the same time and smiling very charmingly. "Can I order a few more snacks to take away?" Jianyuman stretched out 3 fingers and pointed 3 points of wool. "That's right." "Thank you, Kenny Appa," Jianyuman happily waved to the waiter. When she waved, the person in front of her was not a waiter, but a familiar face. This person was very familiar to Jianyuman, because he used to be by Tangyu's side. He was Zhang Tianrui, Tangyu's right-hand secretary. When she first married Tangyuj, she still suspected that Zhang Tianrui and Tangyuj were a couple because they had a very good relationship, and Tangyuj remained unmoved by her seduction when they first got married. But later Jianyuman learned that the two had a very good relationship, and Secretary Zhang was always available, making him a rare and good secretary. When she saw Secretary Zhang, Jianyuman thought he just happened to come here to eat. Unexpectedly, Secretary Zhang walked directly in front of her and stopped. Secretary Zhang bowed respectfully to Jianyuman with a professional smile on his face. "Miss Jian, I don't know if I'm disturbing you." Jianyuman shook her head and said hello with a bright smile. "Secretary Zhang, what a coincidence I meet you here." "Unfortunately, I came here especially for you." Secretary Zhang was still smiling, and couldn't help but glance at Kenny, who was dining with Jianyuman, his boss's biggest love rival, because he was tall and handsome. Kenny, who has a lot of money, caused his boss to face a relationship crisis. Poor Secretary Zhang received an order from Tangyuj today and must bring Jianyuman to him, otherwise his year-end bonus this year will be deducted by 20%. Last time he was inexplicably deducted 10%. He hugged the quilt and cried for several days. This time he must do what the boss asked him to do. Of course he wants to bring Jianyuman to the boss so that the boss can be in a better mood and stop being bored all day long. How can we restore our feelings? Jianyuman pointed at herself. "Are you here to find me?" Secretary Zhang nodded, and glanced at the handsome Kenny again. He had to admit in his heart that this Kenny Bryce was very good, no worse than his boss, and his family was richer than the boss. He was indeed a woman. Everyone wants to marry him. End of this chapter.